Well, welcome back. Another episode of Drumbeats. And the last time we had Chief Crystal Smith with us, we spoke about growing up in Kitimat Village and a bit about Haisla Nation's history of economic and industrial development. And we're very happy and privileged to have Chief Crystal Smith back with us again, Mark, and we're going to talk in more detail now about Cedar LNG.
Yes, welcome, Chief Crystal. Great to have you on the show again. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to speak with you on the previous podcast. So let's talk about Cedar LNG.
Sounds good to me.
And first off, I have to say congratulations on what a journey. I know the journey is maybe only just beginning, but to get to a positive financial investment decision, it's fantastic news. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about the journey and how you got to this point.
It's Cedar LNG has been about 10 to 12 years in the making. It was an idea from one of our advisors and one of our good friends of the Haisla Nation, that we had seen so many different proposals coming in, and the idea popped into his mind that why doesn't the nation own one of the facilities and make it a reality. And we started from there. Our advisors at the time took that as a part of a negotiation where they felt it was beneficial to not build more infrastructure in the province, however, utilize and gain off of what was already being proposed. So it became a part of a negotiation, and we were successful in obtaining 400 MMCF off of the Coastal GasLink project, which feeds LNG Canada. So essentially, when LNG Canada and Coastal GasLink announced their positive final investment decisions, the opportunity for Cedar LNG to become an actual reality, the opportunity sat with the nation to make that happen. So over the years, we had started the preliminary work prior to LNG Canada announcing their FID, so that when they were successful, that we would essentially hit the ground running, as we knew that time was going to be of the essence to be able to make this a reality. So we sought partnership because as an Indigenous community, we knew that we didn't have the necessary skill set when it came to the technologies and essentially the capital that it would require to have Cedar become successful. So we sought partnerships. We didn't necessarily have Pembina right from the beginning as a partner. We went through the process and everything that happened during COVID and the economy essentially impacted Cedar, much like any other project that was being proposed at the time. However, we were very fortunate to be able to work through those issues, and in 2021, I believe it was June or July of 2021, we were happy to announce that we had formed a partnership with Pembina, and from there have worked very diligently to ensure that we were meeting all of the project's timelines and working through all the challenges, we're very, very proud. I mean, it's been one roller coaster of an experience. I had been a large part of LNG Canada and witnessing them getting regular updates in terms of their project when they were going through the process. So largely knew what to expect in terms of some of the hurdles that we were gonna encounter. And how it was up and down. We'd have some very large wins, and within the process, and then come up against a brick wall that would essentially and potentially halt the project. So it was quite the experience, and we were supposed to have announcements in December of 2023. However, that got pushed to June, and on, I believe it was June 25th or 26th, we were able to announce a positive final investment decision here directly in our community with our membership and my family right beside me.
And I would like to understand a little bit more about exactly what Cedar LNG is and how your facility fits in with what LNG Canada is doing. And so maybe you could explain a little bit about that.
So Cedar LNG is a facility that would be the first in Canada, if not North America, as a first floating LNG facility. So which means it is built on a barge, on a ship that will be anchored to the shore on the west side of the Douglas Channel. In terms of how that would fit within LNG Canada, we've got in terms of the economic and the business plan and business cases for LNG from Canada. It fits in with LNG Canada in terms of providing the world with LNG and to be able to offset a lot of the coal burning and other forms of energy that aren't necessarily as green as LNG. So we were able to work with our community. The mandate that we had already received from our community in terms of supporting LNG Canada, it fits within our community's expectations and how they approved a commodity like LNG Canada.
And was that a fierce debate within the community?
It was a very long process. We took the engagement piece very strategically within our community by educating our members, just as our elected leaders and our staff were being educated around the impacts and what to expect from an LNG plant being operational in our territory. We had spent many hours with experts in our local facility, but one important aspect that we took on was we have 2,000 Haisla members, and they all don't reside within our community. So to ensure that we were getting the full support of our membership, we would do community engagement sessions here locally, and then we would travel to hubs of where they would reside. So we would take the experts and all the information, and we would travel to Vancouver to be able to give the same information and the same education to our members, regardless of where they resided.
And there are lots of interesting aspects of the development, and I'm sure part of the message and engagement with the community was around risks, environmental risks, financial risks, as well as rewards. So I'm interested in how that process, and how did you sell this as successfully as you did to the community?
I mean, in terms of the impact around the education of Cedar LNG was essentially introducing the new technology that was being introduced. So a large part of these engagement sessions happened even before we had partners, so that we could help educate our members and give them background information many years ago. When the first decisions, I'm actually one of the last original Haisla Cedar board members that was on the newly formed board, and a part of our first decision making was around the technologies and the discussion around having our Haisla values and the protection and importance of the environment felt throughout every decision that was being made by Cedar LNG and our future partners. So the first decisions that we made had large in part to do with the technology that we had chosen a floating facility as opposed to one that would be on land. We also decided that we were going to have a air-cooled system versus a water-cooled, which would then minimize the impacts on our Douglas Channel. And we went with electric drives versus gas-driven, which ultimately impacts the air quality here in our territory. And we decided that those decisions would not be impacted by any type of discussion around returns that the nation would potentially see in the future. We felt it was important that this project was held to a higher standard and higher expectation, given that it would be nation-owned and potentially the first of its kind in the world. So we felt that it was important that we held ourselves up to a much higher expectation level, so that we could be proud to stand in front of our community and to talk and introduce more information about Cedar LNG. So I think from that and relaying that information to our members, I believe gained the trust and the foundation that we had, given that we were going to be inserting our Haisla values throughout the entire process. When it came to choosing our partners, it was important that they acknowledged that we weren't going to be changing any aspect of the project, given any discussion around potential revenues and the economic benefit. And when we chose Pembina as the partner, our values were extremely in alignment when it came to those discussions. And in fact, with our expertise, we were able to further minimize impacts on the site, and with the technologies that their expertise was able to bring to our partnership. So we've been working very diligently and closely and introducing them to our community, and being able to express how those values were in alignment, and the work that they were bringing to the partnership tremendously added value, and I would say solidified that stability within our, not only our community, but within the province and within Canada. So every aspect of the project as we moved it forward, one of the main hurdles that our team encountered was around our equity raise and that portion. All of our equity is being brought to the table through the First Nations finance. Through their process, they required a community referendum, and which required us to do a very focused strategic engagement session, and we did that through a process where we had community sessions here in community. We held that one online as well, so that if you couldn't make any of the other sessions, that you were able to attend virtually and ask all questions. Those sessions were very well attended by our membership. Amazing questions, and the feedback and the thoughts that our members came with were absolutely tremendous. It was the most strategic and thorough engagement session that I've seen yet in all of my 11 years so far here with the nation. And the feedback was a positive blessing from our community for us to take on the equity and to be able to have our portion of the finance to Cedar successful with a 97% vote from our membership.
So I think one of the interesting things is you were a community and a nation ready to engage with investors and other partners, and you spent a lot of time, as you mentioned, looking at the technology, talking about your values. Who are you working with through that process? Because that really laid the groundwork for the successful, I guess, launch of Cedar LNG.
So would you mean like who assisted us through that
Yes.
process? It was purely a nation initiative.
Wow.
But we had been through a lot of community engagement sessions and our experience with LNG Canada. So we had that responsibility for our leadership and also a few of our staff members that our prime focus and a lot of our time and a lot of our effort, we gained the knowledge through our staff to be able to have these conversations with our membership. And then as Pembina was brought on, we would then introduce them to our community and have a couple of sessions where they would come in and provide the other technical pieces of changing of the design of the facilities on land and how we were working towards minimizing even further. So they would come and provide that expertise through the engagement sessions.
I think it's really interesting that this was a Haisla Nation led initiative from concept and then right through. This was not a case of Pembina or any other company coming to you and saying, we want to build this facility, will you support us? You set the parameters and the specifications based on your community engagement, and those conditions had to be satisfied by any partner coming in. I'm interested in what the structure looks like with Pembina. It's close to 50-50, I know, but can you tell us a little bit about how Cedar LNG is structured as a partnership and how you expect it to be governed going forward?
So your statements on of how we were able to bring this to industry and have them be a part of what the work that we were completing here in our territory. We knew that going in that we wanted to maintain majority ownership. In regards to the Indigenous participation, I think too far often than not, a lot of communities would see a reverse in terms of actively participating, where they would have a stake within major projects, and then find some way along as the project progresses, a lot of dilution in the sense of that ownership piece when projects progress for whatever circumstance, whatever reason it has happened. However, we knew that it was important and it was a key factor in us. So in the proposals, a part of the decisions and the makeup of Cedar, that was if not the most important key piece. We did not want to get lost in it being an Indigenous community, very small in a sense of having any partner come in and being able to kind of dwindle our stake in the project away. So it again, as a foundation of having our values driven into Cedar, it was important for us to have that majority ownership, thus having representation in a decision-making body. So our governance structure is actually a 50-50 as well. The way we're able to make the success of it is, the decisions for the project have to be unanimous. Where we are appointed as from our elected leadership to sit on the board of Cedar LNG, we do have a responsibility to be bringing decisions back to the entire elected leadership, as does Pembina in terms of their responsibility to them. So we have it within our governance structures to be able to bring the necessary information back to our collective leadership, and then come together with decisions that are essentially a part of the mandate from their board and our council.
And you've established a new economic development corporation, I see, just this year. Is that how you hold the interest in the partnership, through that development corporation?
It would be, so we have established it's Yakwa Development Corp, which means in our language, working together. So they are newly formed as of April 1st. A lot of the, it's a flow and it's a working relationship between Haisla Nation Council and Yakwa Development. So in partnership between our two entities, we each have responsibility within that structure. A lot of the ECDEV files, which would entail the Cedar entities, have moved to Yakwa. However, the maintaining the rights and title has remained with Haisla Nation Council and our elected leadership. So there's a process that we have implemented, but it's very much in partnership as well.
And I'm curious also, you've gone for an equity participation, a majority equity participation. That comes with risks as well as rewards. How have you de-risked this project for your community? You mentioned that First Nations Financial Authority has provided financing. I assume that's some form of debt, and that's debt for the community. How have you de-risked the financial arrangements?
De-risking the financial aspect when it comes to the nation was definitely a process that we undertook in working closely with other levels of government. We're fortunate to have the established relationships with the province of BC leadership, as well as the federal government. So the announcement of the loan guarantee program from the feds was absolutely important in terms of the work that we were completing, and the same with the province of BC, and being able to take what they've seen and in terms of the importance of Indigenous participation and putting it to action is definitely one that is important to the Haisla Nation. So in terms of de-risking, working with other levels of government to be able to ensure that our nation was protected through this process while contributing to the economics of not only the province but of Canada was of huge value and importance to not only our elected leadership but more so of our membership.
What are the key learnings you think for other investors and potential partners looking to work with Indigenous nations across the country? You know, they're coming into the market. They've heard all kinds of things. This is obviously a great success story. What advice would you be giving them about how to approach these opportunities?
I think one of and I've mentioned it in every aspect. You know, I'm very fortunate to hold this title through the success that our nation has seen. But without our membership, I wouldn't. There is no way that I would have the ability to our nation wouldn't have the ability to see the success and you know, without the backing of them and their mandate is absolutely crucial and vital to any type of economic initiative that any community is undertaking. You know, I think a large part of the sensationalism that unfortunately the world has seen is due to that portion of the puzzle missing within certain communities. And that's not always the case. You know, you have communities such as ours that support industrial development because they've seen what the potential is. So I think getting the backing of not just the leadership that's sitting in front of you, but more importantly, getting the backing of the membership that make up that community that it's impacting is a vital key piece in the success that we've been able to see here.
And when you're going through your list of potential partners and working through RFP process or some other process, did you find that some investors really didn't get what you were trying to achieve?
Most definitely. I think that was I remember those meetings very vividly, and we went down to Vancouver. Our leadership had been down in Vancouver for a week, looking through proposals, and not one came back that was similar, that was the same. There was some key pieces that you looked at that were in alignment with our values. But I remember one specifically that had come into the boardroom in Vancouver and had essentially pushed the economic aspect and was telling us if you do not change the technology, the revenues, the project would not be successful, and telling us that the bottom line was more important than our environment essentially in this project. And I think we had allotted at least 3 hours for the conversations to occur. And within a half hour, I had seen that conversation and that opinion was not going to change. And I had seen and felt the tension rising within the room, and had said, there's no point in continuing this conversation if that opinion and that mindset and that approach isn't going to change. And I said, I think we can cut this meeting short. Thank you for coming and thank you for responding. And they had left the room. And I think to much of our team's surprise in having it cut short, it was an interesting, again, to be sitting as an Indigenous community, being able to choose our partner based on what we felt was important. I think was it was quite the experience to have a multi-million-dollar investor walk out of the room.
I'm sure in any project like that, Indigenous or not, to be able to have the leadership say, listen, we just don't think you're aligned with our values, and why waste the time? I'm sure they're reflecting on that today. Rob.
How about the bigger vision, Chief Crystal? Have you started to see some impacts, positive or otherwise, in your community already? I know you're some time away from first exports, but are you already seeing some positive impacts, and what is the bigger vision?
I mean, we're very fortunate to have gone through LNG Canada's process of construction. The industry has been in our territory for well over 12 years now, and to be able to see and witness the impact that it's having on the ground has been absolutely the highlight of me being a part of our leadership. And a huge focus of mine is changing the lives of our people and the quality of their lives. And to be able to see that come to fruition has definitely one that gives me inspiration to get out of bed and to accomplish the things that we've done. It keeps me going in the most difficult times. I find it absolutely amazing to see, and it's through posts on social media. It's through talking to our members in the grocery store, of hearing what they're experiencing because of the opportunity they've been provided. Getting messages saying, I was successful in getting a mortgage. Thank you for you and the rest of council for providing this opportunity. Those are meaningful, absolutely meaningful, and being able to see our people, explore the world for the first time in traveling abroad and doing and being independent. More importantly, I'm seeing an uptake in our culture and revitalization of our language. And I explained in the earlier podcast that I have an identical twin sister, and she's our language and culture teacher in our local community school. And to hear her send voice recordings of her speaking fluently in Haisla is absolutely one that I can, emotional impact that I often find hard to put into words. It's absolutely tremendous to see her and hear her singing a lullaby in Haisla to our grandsons. So I am definitely seeing the impacts, and it's one that it was a need for why we supported these projects. So most definitely, and I think when it comes to Cedar, that is yet to be seen. We are currently starting the works on site, so I'm anticipating that we're going to see an uptake in employment opportunities on site. So definitely looking forward to seeing that. I think it's one important piece is the success of other Indigenous communities. I think being able to accomplish something like Cedar for our nation, I think has set the foundation in terms of displaying to not only Canadians but to the world that Indigenous communities can be a large part of the success in our economies. We're no longer a barrier. In fact, we are solution to be able to have the success that our country has seen so far. So when you have Indigenous communities be a large part of your projects and proposals, it will be successful.
For other communities looking to Haisla, other Indigenous nations and peoples, and consider moving forward with their own projects, you spoke before about the importance of getting everybody on site. Is there some other aspects of that you'd really like to emphasize for learnings for them as well?
I think one of the key highlights of Cedar as well in regards to some of the first decisions that we also made the decision that we would actively involve Indigenous communities that surround our nation to be able to share in the opportunities that our people have seen so far. I'd often talked about with our leadership and with our membership around the economies that existed between our communities prior to contact, that we've all coexisted in our territories and what we could culturally provide one another. And to be able to have the opportunity in a modern day context through major projects is one that, again, it's a important factor, but it's also one that gives me huge pride to be able to have and say that we've been very inclusive and have done our own reconciliation work with our neighboring nations and being able to provide that opportunity as well. So I think in terms of keeping your people along for the journey of your economic development, I think it's important to keep in mind Indigenous communities that surround you and keep them in mind for this journey as well, to be able to have them a part of your success is a huge win.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that, Chief Crystal. I think any of us, and Rob, both you and I live in the UK, and those are the words that anybody in any community wants to hear, that their leadership is concerned for them and for their neighbors. That's what makes a great place to live, and for all. So, Rob, any final thoughts?
Well, I just want to thank Chief Crystal Smith for spending some time with us today, but also for what she's doing, the inspiration that she is for Indigenous people, non-Indigenous people. It's fantastic. You're showing what is possible when things are done properly, and you've shown how to get the community on side. And I think that it's an inspiration to investors as well, because it's proof that it is possible to do big projects with Indigenous communities if you go about it the right way. So I'll say, on behalf of all of us, Nyawa Ngoa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cedar LNG is the first for an Indigenous community, Canada, and the world. Here are the key takeaways. So I think the key thing from point of view from investors, asset managers, and large enterprises over here in the city of London, listening to Chief Crystal, was the story that the Indigenous peoples in Canada are not willing to be partners in development is incorrect. Of course, what they want to have is their recognition of their values and that they have a stake at the table. And I think one of the interesting things is, they now control access to many of the key infrastructure and natural resources in Canada, but they're willing partners. And if you approach them as a willing and equal partner, I think you can be very successful with your investment and know that it's a long-term play you're in, which is great. That's what you're looking for. Investing in an asset that provides a consistent return over time. And with Cedar LNG, you can see Pembina is very lucky to have partnered with the Haisla Nation because they're in that for the long haul together. And I think that's going to be a very successful project for all the factors those two partners can't control.
Yeah, it was really interesting hearing about the story of how Cedar LNG came about. And it is evidence that not all Indigenous communities are against development. To understand that this was a Haisla-led project from the outset, from the concept, right through, was good to hear. Also lessons about how to go about engaging. You heard Chief talk about lots of engagement in the territory, outside the territory. They spent a lot of time making sure that their members understood exactly what was being proposed, the risks as well as the rewards. So a real inspiration and a lesson in how to get projects done and get them done in an environmentally friendly way with massive local community support.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, everyone, our podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music. Please subscribe and follow us. And we're having an upcoming newsletter to highlight future podcasts, talk about some of these issues in more detail with some further background information.
Absolutely, Mark. Look forward to it.